you these things people are still saying. So hello, everybody. Happy Thursday evening. Welcome back to Straight Talk with Dr. Lisa, where we give it to you straight, no chaser. And in that vein, I can't think of anybody better to also give it to you straight, no chaser than Dr. Roger Mitchell. Welcome, Dr. Mitchell.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. It's so great to be here with you again on blackdoctors.org.
Yeah, it's I always love talking to you because you give us a real perspective, and it's a perspective most people don't really get any insight into, and that is that of a pathologist, which is someone who looks at dead bodies. So you understand, you try to understand why people died. But you also are a professor now. So just tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what you were doing before your new job.
So, just recently, I just left DC government. I was the chief medical examiner for the city, as well as the deputy mayor for public safety and justice. And now I am a professor and chair of pathology at Howard University. Some may think that is a difference, but the thread is really leadership management, vision casting, and an overall passion for the health and safety of our people. So now I teach and I'm excited about it. I say that I retired from government. You know what that is, Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes, I
So
do.
retiring from government allows me to serve in a different way community and be in community and of community, which I've always been. But now I can potentially even agitate and activate a little bit more.
But I think some people don't understand the value and the magnitude of what you said. So the position you held in DC, not just as the chief medical examiner, but this position you had overseeing safety and justice, and what was that title again?
Yeah, the deputy mayor for public safety and justice.
Yeah, so tell
Yeah.
people how, for people who don't understand what medical examiners do, like break it
Mm.
down for us. Like, why would the Joe public care that you in particular are the medical examiner and in charge of safety and justice in the city?
Well, I mean, the medical examiner establishes cause and manner of death. And so when our people within our community or any community, but particularly our community, dies suddenly at home or violently in community violence or substance use and abuse with the opioid crisis, having someone that is about community and for community and culturally competent as your medical examiner becomes important because we're establishing the cause and manner of death and we're interacting with the families during their most vulnerable times, when they've lost a loved one. And so you want to have culturally competent care no matter what type of medicine you're practicing, right? From forensic pathology to, OBGYN and having babies. You want people that look like you and sound like you and act like you and understand your culture when they're, performing that type of medicine. So, and then as the deputy mayor, I'm a violence preventionist and think it's important for us to have a community-based violence prevention programming throughout the city. And so, I helped the mayor develop Building Blocks DC, which is, just really getting started, which she put $15 million in to do place-based and person-based work within the most vulnerable communities in the city. And so it's important again, I was there, and with the civil unrest and the killing of George Floyd and I'm the medical examiner and the deputy mayor during those times. And so you now have someone in the room at the highest level that can advocate for community. So you might ask, why'd you leave? Sorry for the noise in the background. My
That's
son
no
is
problem.
acting. He's acting right now. But the the notion of having a medical examiner that has, your interest at heart during these times is extremely important, and a deputy mayor. And so that goes to, our power to elect individuals that have our interest at heart. And then again, I lost my train of thought. You asked, well, why did you leave? Well, listen, I've been working for government for, over 15 years, and I have been in the space for over 15 years, seven of which here in DC. And it was time for me to get on the side of educating young people and being in community and moving my ministry forward.
Wonderful, and I want to get into that. Your calling to mentor young people, particularly given the challenges we have, the public health challenges around violence in the community. But first, for those who are watching the show, we're here with Dr. Roger Mitchell, former chief medical examiner in Washington, D.C., and now professor of pathology at Howard University. If you have questions for Dr. Mitchell, please put them in the chat so that we can register your comment or your question with Dr. Mitchell during the show. So tell us about that, Dr. Mitchell, the mentoring of young people and particularly young men, because as you know, in DC, like a lot of urban centers, we have a lot of gun violence. It's stressful for the community. It's got to be stressful for them as well. And we have a lot of money floating around, but somehow we don't seem to be moving the needle. What's going on, and how can we address this problem once and for all?
Wow, I mean, it's such a deep problem of violence in our community. Now gun violence is highlighted because of the Boulder, Colorado shooting, and I've been talking about that all week on shows just like yours, about the active shooter, and the importance of developing proper gun control laws in this country and closing those gun show loopholes, because we know here in the District of Columbia the majority of guns are coming from Virginia. They're not coming
Mm,
from DC. DC has very strict gun laws. So these are guns that are bought legally in gun shows, or in bulk, within gun shops, and then illegally trafficked into our city and sold into our community, right? And so there's work that needs to be done to shut that down. And so anytime you come into a community that is feeling disenfranchised, a community that may not have the same level of access as other communities, access to equitable education, jobs, housing. There may be food deserts and environmental deserts. And then you add the access within that stress and anxiety, guns to resolve conflict, then that
mm,
is a milieu for destruction. And so our job is to, yes, stop the guns from coming in, but we don't control that. The other option is like what you do, Lisa, Dr. Fitzpatrick. I'm looking at the back of your name. You got all them letters. Look at all those letters. You got a lot of letters in the behind your name, but that doesn't stop you from being in community. There's a lot of us that have a whole bunch of letters that are living in the suburbs and are not in our community. And until we realize that it's our community, it's not they, and we
mm-hmm,
actually operate and work and mentor and love and engage in our community the way professionals, physicians have done in the past, then we've left our community behind. And I'm reminded of my grandfather. My grandfather was, a graduate of Howard University College of Medicine in 1932. He's one of the first Black physicians in New Jersey. He lived
mm,
and worked in Atlantic City, in the inner city. And I heard stories about him. And so, when it was time for me to buy a house, I didn't buy a house up in the Gold Coast. I'm out here Kenilworth, Mayfair, Nanny Helen Burroughs, because it's so important for us to be in community, operating in community.
But it's okay. So this show is about straight talk. And I just have to say, for a lot of us who grew up in these communities, it's hard for people to see the need or even feel that as part of their personal mission when they've endured the hardship themselves and then finally, they reach some level of success. And then I can see why they'd be drawn to live in the suburbs. But I mean, what is it that could inspire people, I guess, to come back into the community when they've had a taste of some peace of mind, not worrying about gun violence or food deserts? I live in Southeast right now. One day my refrigerator was empty and I didn't feel like going to the grocery store. And so I thought, well, where could I walk to? And you know what I came up with? Popeyes, a corner store, a couple liquor stores. Like, that's the reality. And so I guess I'm saying I don't necessarily fault them. It has to be a calling. But what would you say to people to get them to come back in the community, knowing all the stressors that are here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you said it, right? It's a calling, right? Like you said, I can't walk. If I walk into the fake 7-Eleven, right? It's not even a 7-Eleven, it's a 7. You know what I mean? That's where I'm going, where the chips is hip hop chips, is rap chips. Feel me? Because they just doing us so dirty, right? And so, but because I live here, I understand that I'm in a food desert. It's not theoretical, right? A lot of individuals pontificate about equity, but don't feel the stress or know what inequity is. And I'm not saying Black people, because we understand that. So all I'm saying is I'm not making people feel bad about moving to the suburbs, right? Because, I grew up in the suburbs. So I know my mom and my dad moved to the suburbs, right? But the point that I'm making is that even if you move to the suburbs, you got a working community.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can go home to your big house in Waldorf. Like, do that, please. With your cobblestone driveway and your Benz. Like, that's because that makes you like, I want that
Don't
too.
drive your Benz in the hood. Come on.
You can drive your Benz in the hood. Why not?
I wouldn't.
I do.
I like to blend in because then you get the real deal. Like, people tell you what's going on, but I don't want to be seen as an other in my community, which I would be if I was flossing and flashing.
No, that's not necessarily true. Listen, the brothers that I deal with, they want to see me fresh. They want to see, the brothers, they like, yo, Doc, I see you. And then I'm saying, listen, righteousness can get you the same things that unrighteousness can get you. Righteousness,
amen.
Righteousness, righteousness can put money in your pocket better and more sustainable than unrighteousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I don't come, I'm hip hop. So we wear our success. And in our community, you want to look good. So yes, I'm going to I'm going to look good wherever I go, because the brothers are going to be like, yo, man, what Doc talking about? Look at his shoes. Like, look at his whip. He talking about that, but he ain't getting money. Right. But the reality of it is that if I can show them a little bit, they're like, oh, well, you are. So tell me a little bit more.
Yeah.
If I'm cash apping brothers, when their babies are due, if I'm cash apping brothers to make sure that they have, a laptop because they just got a new job, because when they just got out of jail, and they can call me and I can do that for them. They know, and the only way you have those relationships when somebody can call you and say, hey, Doc, can I hold something for a little bit? The only way you get those relationships is by being in, and not and in and for, not some, oh, it's a program and I'm getting a grant. So because
Right.
I have a program and I'm a grant, then I'm in it. No, this is out of your pocket because you believe in
Mhm.
the freedom. I'll end with this for this question. Back in the late 1800s, there were less brothers in slavery than there are brothers in jail right now. So the question becomes, would you be an abolitionist back in
Oh,
1890, back in
yes.
1870, back in 18, would you be fighting for the freedom of your people during Reconstruction back then? Because not all black people were.
Mhm.
Just like
Mhm.
today, just like today, not all black people are either.
Right.
So, but today, you got to be an abolitionist. You got to be. There's so much at stake. We're so hungry, and we're dying from everything.
We are. We are dying from everything. And this pandemic, now the world is awake, right? They're saying, "Oh wow, look at that's so awful. That's a terrible thing." But guess what? You and I have been talking about these disparities for a long time, right? But now that people are paying attention, what's going to be different? And have you seen anything different? I mean, as a medical examiner during the pandemic, like what are you seeing that's shifted for Black people?
Listen, I'm different,
How?
right? Well, I got ordained to be a minister during the pandemic.
Because of the pandemic?
In the pandemic, I was on my way, but in the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
right? The question I always, that question makes me believe that we're waiting for someone to do something. The way
Yes.
that question was posed, it makes me believe like there's somebody that's not doing something for us, and those people are to blame. Yeah, institutional structural racism is real, and it is to be battled and fought tooth and nail, bloody knuckled, right? But nobody's coming. Nobody's coming, Lisa.
Yeah.
So if this is straight talk, we are the only ones that are coming. So everybody, all your listeners, let's go. All your
Mm-hmm.
listeners, go get vaccinated. All your listeners, where's the next place we need to be for identification of jobs? When's the next city council vote that we need to be at? They're trying to take my church's building. You know that the gentrification
Eminent domain, or
the gentrification of this city is creating an environment where Foster House on 9th and Rhode Island, which is owned by a black church. We
mm-hmm.
have attorneys that are misleading the tenants to suggest that we want them out of that building. We don't want them out of that building. The building is 50 years old. We want to put them in a place so we can renew that building, do that building properly, and then bring them back. We're not the government. We're the church. See, the government would tell you they want to put you somewhere and bring you back and never bring you back. The church
Yeah.
is going to bring you back. And so we got these attorneys that got the tenants riled up, and the tenants, all black tenants. I'm not going to tell you what the attorneys are, but the attorneys are not the black tenants. And they've created an environment where court battle after court battle. And what happens in the scenario is that the black church will fall back. And then because it's too much money to fight the legal battles,
Mm-hmm.
then they will
Mm-hmm.
auction the building off to the highest bidder. They will still redevelop the building, and those individuals will be out.
Right.
Because what
Over and
really
over
does
and
it
over again.
over and over and over again. And so that's the type of fight that we're in, right? That's the type of fight for the individual who just got out of jail. I got a young brother who just got out in January. Me and him had breakfast on Sunday. This brother is so dynamic. He has such a great story. He is such passion. And you know what we talked, we made some phone calls. He called me on Monday. I said, "What you doing?" He said, "I'm calling you from work. I can't talk too long." I about shouted.
Right on.
I about shouted. You know, and then you know, this week I'm on the phone with a bunch of preachers who's trying to organize surrounding the taking of the foster house. Right? That's the work.
Yeah.
And that's not, I'm not doing that. We straight talk. If you talk about what people need to do, what are you getting involved in? Now can I confess something?
Please.
I didn't take my son to lacrosse today. I missed the lacrosse. I missed his practice today. I told him I was going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed it. Right? So there's some trade-offs to, you know, I'm not meeting the mark every time. So I had to give him a big hug. I apologized to him. I said, "I love you, son. I'm sorry I missed the mark. I promise I will make sure that I have nothing on Thursdays. I apologize."
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? And he said to me, he said, "It's okay, Dad, it's okay." So there are things that you're going to have to do and be places where you need to be, where you know it's important to be. And then there's places where you can't be that are just as important.
Yeah.
And that's the balance.
And we so appreciate you being here on a Thursday night. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, but I said yes to you before he started practice. So
okay.
We don't break promises either.
Yeah. So I just have one more question for you. But before I ask my question to end the show, we have a community member, and that is one of the hallmarks of Dr. Lisa, or Straight Talk with Dr. Lisa, is I always want to elevate community voice and allow the community to speak directly to us. You know, they spend a lot of time listening to us, talking to each other and preaching at them and giving them lectures. But I don't want anything to get lost in translation. So here we have Miss Yvonne Smith. She is a member of the Congress Heights community. Take yourself off mute, Miss Yvonne, and ask Dr. Mitchell your question.
Okay.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Okay.
I liked the way you were talking, and I wanted to preface this by saying, and I grew up in a community where in the block down from me, there was a doctor.
That's it.
And I told Dr. Lisa about that. I learned to play tennis from Walter Johnson in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I always felt very good about the work that Dr. Lisa does. She takes time. I know even a couple of times when I was talking to her, she was going to a family thing, but she took time. She didn't rush me off. And she's my neighbor. So
come on, Miss Yvonne, get to your question. We have a limited time here.
Okay, got two questions. Walk us through when a call is given to medical examiner. Exactly what happens? Why are you called and what happens?
Man, I love Miss Yvonne Smith. Miss Yvonne, I'm coming when the COVID is over. I'm coming to your house. Can I come over?
Okay, I've had my shots. You want to eat dinner?
All right, I had my shots too, so we gonna do it.
And CDC says you can gather with no mask if you've had your shot, so you're all set.
That's what I'm talking about. Excuse me. So when a call comes in, it comes into the investigations unit. It comes in either from a law enforcement officer who is at a scene or at a home, a private residence, or it comes in from a physician when the death is at a hospital. The reason why they call the medical examiner is because there is a possibility that death is not natural, right? So that means that it could be an accident, it could be, you know, an overdose, it could be a homicide or a suicide. That's the reason why it's called in. And then once it's called, that investigator takes some history, just like your doctor would ask you a history. but my investigators can't ask the patient because the patient is deceased. So they ask the law enforcement officer, or they ask the doctor, hey, what is their name? Where are they from? What happened? What are the medications? All the things that would help them decide whether or not it's a medical examiner case. Once the case is decided to be a medical examiner case, because there's some possibility that it could be not natural, understand that if it could be natural and it is natural, then the medical examiner will decline the case. And then we bring that case in, and that case gets an examination. And that examination is an autopsy examination, and it starts with an external examination from the top of the head to the soles of the feet, looking at every body part, and then an internal examination, which is a surgical procedure that enters to the chest and abdominal cavity, looking at each and every organ. And then we take fluids and test those for toxicology. We take little pieces of tissue and look at them under the microscope, all for the purposes of establishing cause and manner of death.
And toxicology is
the study of blood or other fluids for the presence or absence of toxins, chemicals like drugs.
Mm-hmm. And before Miss Yvonne asks her second question, can you just help people understand the importance of giving consent for an autopsy? Because I can't tell you how many times I've had a family at the hospital and we need the autopsy because we want to understand why the person died. But for a variety of reasons, it's taboo or stigmatized, or people don't really understand the importance. They don't want the body desecrated in some way. So help people understand that. Why are we asking for autopsies, and why are they important?
Well, if you've been around doctors as long as I've been around doctors, a lot of doctors don't know what they're doing. Okay. All right.
Straight talk.
They just act like they know what they're doing. And so doctors, because they don't know what they're doing all the time, they either don't know why someone has died, or they made a mistake that could have caused the death. And because of that, it's important to get an autopsy, particularly in a hospital. And that information will just make those doctors smarter. And that autopsy can help save someone else's life. We're going to be trying to do autopsies on all of our COVID deaths at Howard University, and hoping that the families will consent to that, because we want to know why people are dying. Now we're talking about long COVID. Long COVID is when people are dying now after they have recovered from COVID and then have some subsequent sequelae or symptoms that lead to their death. And a lot of people don't understand that is a phenomenon called long COVID. And so we want to make sure that, because our community suffered from COVID the worst, that we're not having individuals die unexpectedly from long COVID, and then we don't have the data and the information to be able to help the rest of the community battle what is coming down the pipe. Right
on. Excellent. Miss Yvonne, what's your second question?
My second question was prompted by your discussion. I one of Dr. Lisa's programs, some doctors said it was easy to become a doctor. I never thought that it was easy to become a doctor. They said we've had a 500% increase in people applying to go to medical school from our communities, African American community. For someone who's listening to this, or they might be shared to someone else, and they want to become a doctor, I always tell people, you want to be a doctor or lawyer, you got to start back in 5th grade. So can you please talk about a little bit about becoming a doctor? What happened before that? Can I just get all D's in school, and all of a sudden in the 12th grade, I want to become a physics major, and how much money does it cost to be a doctor? So I consider it a deep sacrifice when I see people like Dr. Lisa in the community, because I feel that, maybe it's wrong, that they've done a lot to get to where they are. So talk to me about that.
Well, Dr. Lisa has a lot more letters behind her name than I have. So she worked.
MD. So just talk about that.
Yeah. So the MD, no, it is hard work. I mean, but anything that's worth anything is hard work. And the sooner you know what you want to do, the better. But it's still never too late, right? I had a buddy of mine who didn't know he wanted to be a doctor until he graduated high school. So he had dropped out when he was a senior in high school and found out he wanted to be a doctor after he was locked up with one of his boys and decided he wanted to change his life. So he went back and got his GED. And after he got his GED, he went to community college. And while he was in community college, he became a radiology tech because he wanted to be a doctor so bad. And then he got into a 4-year college and graduated that 4-year college with honors. Didn't graduate his 4-year college until he was 26 years old. And then he applied and got into med school. And he was one of my medical school classmates. And now he's the head of ultrasound at a prestigious university, physician.
No
right?
season. He's the top of his class.
Right. Yeah, but he went to undergraduate after he dropped out of high school. And so what I'm saying to you is that let me tell you, there is no barrier to what God has for you. And whatever he has for you is for you. And there's no barrier to success. You have to make a decision to be successful, and then work hard and then ask for help. I asked for help. Now, I was one of those kids that wanted to be a doctor since I was 6 years old. So, everything in my mind was, I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna be like my granddaddy. I'm gonna be like my granddaddy. And but that's not everybody's story. And was I a straight A student? No, because I like to run my mouth and play football and do things I wasn't supposed to be doing. So but there's always an opportunity for you to do what you want to do. So if people are listening here and they think, oh, I'm too old, I didn't do well, or I would think about being a doctor, but I don't think I can do it. Well, you're talking yourself out of it, because there's always an opportunity for you to be successful, whether it's a doctor or anything else.
Wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Yvonne, Miss Yvonne, for coming and asking your questions. You're welcome to hang out. We have one more question for Dr. Mitchell before he goes. Dr. Mitchell, we like to leave people with some advice. And I know that as a medical examiner, a pathologist, you see the best and the worst of what's done to us and what we do to ourselves. And I know that stress is also toxic stress. Chronic stress is one of the things that harms us a lot.
Yeah.
So if you want to offer some insights about what you've learned about stress and ways we can reduce stress to improve our own health, because as you said, nobody's coming to save us. So we need to do what we can to save ourselves. And you see people on the table after it's too late.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for us to make sure we are doing what we can so that it's not too late?
Well, Dr. Lisa, I think you've probably on this show multiple times have talked about the things that people need to do to improve their health in general, right? And things to improve your health is the things that de-stress. So, you need to eat right. You need to drink a lot of water. A car doesn't run if the oil is not changed and the gas is not right. It just doesn't.
Love the car body metaphors. It's so great.
Yeah. And so, you got to drink enough water, right? My son, he's like my son. My nephew makes teas, natural teas. And these natural teas, are important for your body. How you eat, what you eat. Is extremely important. Taking time to meditate and sit quietly. Those are have a good sleep habit, right? Making sure that you're taking time to get enough sleep. People don't realize that if you don't get at least 7 hours of sleep, 6 to 7, then the waste in your central nervous system, particularly in your brain, is not removed, right? You need that time to remove the waste. And so that waste that builds up it clouds your mind. It leads to disease. So you want to allow for that the waste to to be removed from your brain, so that your central nervous system and your core can reboot, and you have a good computer to use the next day. And then love. Boy, love and laugh. If you can love and laugh, then you can release dopamine in your body, that pleasure centered drug, and you can have your good sense about you, and that heals you when you can love and laugh and have good relationships. Don't isolate yourself. Share the things that you like, share the things that hurt you. Have trusting relationships. Foster those things. Talk about your trauma. Get your trauma out of you so that you can have room for the love and the safety that you need to be able to be stress free, right? Those is what I would say. And you can't pour from an empty cup, so you got to have someone pouring into you as you're pouring into other people. So find a mentor, a trusted advisor who can pour into you and talk good things over you, so that you can feel full, so that when you walk away, you can pour into other people.
Wow, wonderful. Such great advice. Miss Yvonne was saying, what do the dead tell you as you're looking over them? What would you say to them if they were still alive? And I think that is great advice. Yeah. Unfortunately, too late for those you've ministered over, but not too late for us to take your advice. So thank you so much for being here, Miss Yvonne, but also Dr. Roger Mitchell. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you again on Straight Talk with Dr. Lisa. Bye, everybody.